Oh, hi everybody and welcome. This is the Apostate Prophet. Why am I blurry? I don't know. I suddenly blurred. Why does this happen? Okay, I'm good now. I was just vibing with that too. I really like that, by the way.
Yeah, pretty nice.
Yeah. Hi everybody and welcome. This is the Apostate Prophet. I hope you're having a fantastic day or night or evening or whatever it is that you want to have or have. I'm here today with somebody that I have been wanting to speak to for quite a long time, but I'm not very great in arranging things, so it just took a while. But I'm here with Faye. Faye, how are you?
I'm good. This is actually a very special episode because I've not posted a video since my hair was green. So this is the first time people are seeing my hair red.
Oh,
So I've not. I've been taking a little break from the internet just because things have started. Like normal life has started, and I've been going through. We were talking off the live for a little while. I've been going through a bit of an up and down spell with my depression and all of my other mental health issues that sort of argue with each other depending on which one wants to go first.
mhm.
But I've been good, and I'm really excited to speak to you because if I can be completely honest, there wasn't a lot of ex-Muslim content that I looked at before leaving Islam, but yours was the one that made me feel like I wasn't weird because I felt like all the other ex-Muslim stories were like, yeah, they went through a journey, but they weren't super tied to the religion. Whereas I feel like you were, and that made me feel like I was normal because I was very, very tied to religion before I left.
Mhm.
Uh, so I'm really, really happy to be here, and I'm excited to start.
That's amazing. It's an honor to me to be quite honest. I like what you're doing. I like your story. I want to talk about it extensively today.
Mhm.
I know that you were very religious, that you took your religion very seriously when you were a Muslim.
Yeah.
And I definitely think we need to talk about that because you know, as I do as well, that when we talk about us being ex Muslims, people who have left Islam and who now speak against Islam, one of the common objections that comes from the Muslim apologist camp is always, oh, you were never real Muslims to begin with. You never understood Islam to begin with. Or you're just using this, whatever it is. But I was very religious. I was very practicing. You were very religious. You were very practicing. I think I've even seen a photo of you that you shared in which you from your religious times where you
Well,
uh,
I
what
just like a black tent back then. But that wasn't all. I used to cover my face as well. That was when I had first taken it off because I was unable to breathe in my niqab at that point, which I didn't really want to take it off, but I had to because it was obstructing my will to live. I don't know. So that was when I had started to take that off. But I worn the niqab for about 9 or so years. Um, but yeah, I was very into my religion, and even though like I made you aware that I had this direct message conversation with Muhammad Hijab, and even I can't share the messages because I'm not. He's told me I'm not allowed to, which is fine. I'm going to respect his wishes on
well,
that. No, I don't think he deserves any kind of respect. But even he had admitted that I know my religion. I know Islam very, very well. So I did take it quite seriously.
it is very funny that Mohammed Hijab has a chat with you in the background when I bet to you that many of his followers would not at all approve of the fact that he is having a chat with you in private.
I think that's why he didn't want me to share a lot of the messages.
Yeah.
But I remember Jana had a really good time when I shared those messages with her. So um, I don't know. I'm not opposed to speaking to anybody. I've never been opposed to speaking to anybody. Um, it was just bizarre because I don't even think he wanted to DM with you. He doesn't DM with anybody. If you go to his Twitter, he doesn't follow anyone. So it was just weird and funny that he wanted to have a private conversation with me, which was just like. And I also think there are a couple of theories. There are a couple of theories that me and my friends discussed. One of them was that he was like looking for a wife because he's not married, and he like the biggest thing that he could get was like an ex-Muslim who returned to Islam. Like if he could
Mhm.
get, I live in a city as well. I live in London. The other thing was, I think because he's had like a very poor reputation recently because of what he did to you, your wife, a lot of other people, he thought he could redeem himself if he could bring me back to Islam because he was hard. He was giving me the hard sell. But I do think I tripped him up a couple of times with the arguments that I had, because he had to bring out Ibn Taymiyyah not believing that hell was an eternal thing. And I was like, that's not something that people talk about when they talk about Ibn Taymiyyah, because Ibn Taymiyyah saying something like that and him being such a prominent scholar, but also saying that hell is not permanent when it's reinforced so many times in the Quran that hell is permanent. That's not something that people bring up, because it is a form of blasphemy that Ibn Taymiyyah took part in, which I just find incredibly interesting about the guy. But I don't know. That's just a whole other topic.
It is like one of the things that I think he wouldn't even discuss in public, but
no, and he said that he doesn't agree with that opinion. But that's one of the biggest problems I have with Islam, is that hell is an eternal punishment. So he was like, "Oh, Ibn Taymiyyah is like an appeal from authority sort of thing." It was just funny. That's all I'm saying. It's just funny.
It is very interesting. The guy that we're talking about, I mean, I've had a long adventure with him over the last 2 months. We've gladly taken a break for a month, but not for too long. And it will be bad for him when it comes back. But he seems like he's like this person who's above everyone and who will not take your crap, and he doesn't even care, and he does whatever he wants. But under the surface, he takes it very seriously when we criticize him or when we mock him, when we say things to him, which is why when I asserted that he was actually scared to debate a certain topic with me, he got extremely offended by that and was he went mad over that.
I think I would arguably say he's seen a lot of my videos, but he's definitely seen the ones that where I've talked about him. And he took it very, very hard when I basically proved that he had sexually assaulted, or sexually harassed rather, you and a lot of other personalities and your wives based on what he was saying. And he took it very, very seriously. And then I shared that thing that he sent me to you. And I said, "What does this mean?" And you said you deleted it, and you didn't. Whereas he didn't delete any of his. You said something about his mom or something, and you got rid of it afterwards.
It is very stupid. He actually told his own audience. He lies to his own people. He told his own audience that he only said messed up sexual things to me and to others because he wanted to just to make a point, because he wanted to test our moral consistencies. But he's lying about that. He's very bad tempered, and he, for example, a year ago, he started insulting my mother and my sister, my entire family, of engaging in incest, and said and asserted on publicly on Twitter that I was currently being probably being in an incestuous relationship with my mother and my sister, which is a disgusting thing to say.
You know what?
The thing is, afterward he took it back, because he said that he spoke to some of his brothers who advised him that this is not the way to go, and he deleted it afterwards. So he admitted that. But just a month ago now, he revisited that topic and told to his audience that he only made those posts to test my moral consistency, apparently because he didn't remember that he afterward took them back and labeled them as something wrong. So he lies, he's short-tempered, he's very messed up, and he lies to his own audience about his motives.
So stupid. Like, his backtracking is so stupid. I called him out quite a few times when we were talking privately about it. But he always just turns it on you, and he's like, "Oh, well, I don't think you would do this." And it was like, it doesn't change the fact that you're still doing something wrong. But what I was going to say is that whenever religious people bring up incest as an argument, I just, like, my parents are cousins. They would not have been cousins if Islam didn't allow that. Okay. You know, incest is a thing in religion.
Yeah, sometimes I think I'm so messed up and so such an immoral ex-Muslim because something is wrong with me because my parents are cousins. Maybe that's the case. I don't know.
Oh, but... oh, you must have wonderful genes. I'll be like, well, I'll take it as a compliment. I can't take it.
Anyway, enough about Mohammed Hijab for now.
about incest.
Enough about incest. Enough about incest and Mohammed Hijab for now. I've had enough of that guy anyway. I'm really trying to take a break from dealing with that guy. Otherwise, I would have published my whole refutation of him long ago. I'm still working on it. I'm sitting down and I think, okay, I have to write this. I said I would publish this 1 month ago. I have to write this. I have to work on this now. But then I sit down and I start typing a little bit, and I feel this sickness, this darkness inside. I'm like, I don't want to deal with this right now. I would rather do something happier, learn something. But anyway, I want to come back to you. That's the whole point of this conversation. So as I take it, you were a strict Salafi Muslim when you were a religious Muslim, right?
Yeah, so with my journey with Islam, a lot of people are like, oh, Tabligh Jamaat is not the same as Salafi Islam. You were a Hanafi before. I just want to say that when I started getting interested in Islam, I wasn't a Salafi. My family were not religious. They were Muslim, like namesake Muslim. They identified as Muslim, but they weren't very practicing. I would very frequently call myself a seeker of knowledge or a student of knowledge, talib al-ilm or whatever, because I had a very keen interest in religion in general. I thought that religion was, and I'm a very artsy person. I enjoy humanities, I enjoy history, I enjoy religion. But I had a very, very keen interest in it, partially because my father had an interest in it. And he wasn't very religious until I was about 11. And then we both kind of fed off each other in a very, very toxic way, getting each other more and more into religion. So when my father went on this religious kick, I got very, very interested in it. And this was around 10 or 11, which was a very formative year for me because I had been put into a secondary school that was completely Islamic, or I don't know what they call it in America, middle school, I guess. Yeah. When you're like 10 and then you go like before high school. That's what I'm talking about. So
I went through 3 countries, so I have no idea anymore what any system is called in any country.
Yeah, I guess junior high, that's what we would call it. We call it a secondary school here in the UK. But I got put into an Islamic school, and I use the word school very, very lightly because they didn't really care about the academic side. It was more about the ethos and an Islamic environment. They had like Quran classes, they had Arabic classes, they had Islamic studies classes where we studied fiqh or Islamic jurisprudence. We studied aqidah, or like the foundation 6 articles of faith that you're constantly asked about. We learn about all kinds of stuff, and the school was run by Hendon Mosque or Hendon Masjid, which is a very heavily Deobandi or Tablighi Jamaat mosque. Like that's the sect that they follow.
Can you expand on that for those who don't know?
Yeah, so Deobandi or Tabligh, they're a very conservative sect, to put it very simply. They generally operate in India, so the majority is of the Shafi'i or Hanafi school of thought. But I used to bring home like everything that I learned in school because me and my father were quite close. And he would want to know what I was learning as well, in terms of Islam, not in terms of anything else, but in terms of Islam, he wanted to know what I was learning. And I would ask him, like, why is it that in some schools of thought, so with general Sunni Islam, you have 4 major schools of thought. There is a 5th one that some people adhere to, but it's a very minor one. So the 4 major ones are Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki, and Hanbali. And these 4 schools of thought is how generally Sunni Muslims practice Islam. I'm trying to explain it best as I can in a short period of time. But my teacher was of the opinion, because I'm from Bangladesh, that I followed the Hanafi school of thought when really I wasn't practicing before, and it was my choice, I guess. I don't know. But the problem that I had was with the general practice of Islam. Islam has a practice for everything that you do in your life. From how you wake up to how you fall asleep, how you go to the bathroom, to how you pray, it has a way of doing things. And something that's really, really important in Islam is your purity, or wudu, or how you. I feel like I'm throwing out a lot of words, but purity is really, really important because you need it to pray, fast, everything, right? But the different things that break your purity are different in different schools of thought, and I didn't understand how that could be possible, considering that it was such an important thing. So that's when I started looking into more like Salaf al-Salihin kind of understandings of Islam, where it was like we have to look at the source. So, for example, in the Shafi'i understanding of practice, they say that if you bleed or if you touch a non-mahram, it breaks your purity.
I know mahram is a
Someone
person.
who's not your who's someone who's not related to you. Let's just put it simply. But what I didn't understand was at Hajj time, when there's so many people and there's so many people who aren't related to you there that are touching you constantly, how does that fly, considering you need your purity to go around the Kaaba or the the place where you go to worship?
There are exceptions in the Kaaba.
My teacher, who was she was one of these Tablighi people. My teacher had said that some people will convert from Shafi'i understandings to Hanafi understandings in order to do a tawaf around the Kaaba and then convert back when they leave Hajj. And it's like, that doesn't sound like that just sounds like a lot of work for no reason. Let's just find out what the actual rule is. So I don't know if that's a very long-winded way of explaining how I got radicalized, but that was basically the catalyst for it.
No, this is very interesting. I have actually, to be very honest, maybe this is a simple thing that I never thought about, but I have actually never thought about it that way because, I grew up as a Hanafi Muslim. I was supposed to be a Hanafi Muslim. It's very common among Turkish Muslims, Turkish Sunni Muslims, to follow the Hanafi school, and I knew people who followed the Shafi school, and as a result, very basic things about purity were different between us, between our schools. And as you said, it is actually not such a simple issue. It's not such a simple matter. It is about purity.
Well, for me, I was generally a very annoying kid in that I asked a lot of questions, and when it came to things like this, especially when it came to like things that applied to me, so like with salah or prayer and fasting and things like that, I wanted to make sure I was doing everything correctly. And for example, Shafi'i as a school of thought is extremely strict compared to the rest of Islam. It's quite strict. So for me,
but in Shafi'i Islam, you can, for example, eat all kinds of seafood, as far as I remember. Whereas in Hanafi Islam, you're not supposed to eat seafood that looks ugly.
So Imam Abu Hanifa, he took a lot of rules from like the Bible and the Torah as well. So shellfish is prohibited in like Orthodox Judaism and Orthodox Christianity. So he kind of took that and was like, don't eat shellfish. But in the Maliki and I think the Shafi'i school of thought, you can eat anything that's in the sea. But when you look at like the authentic Sunnah, which is in the the Sahih Sitta, or the 6 books of Hadith, or the sayings of the Prophet, so many Arabic words. When you look at them, there are narrations that say you can eat anything that's in the sea. And when I heard that, I asked my dad, "Oh, well, can we eat crocodiles?" And he was like, "Yeah, you probably can. It's part of the sea." And I was like, "Well, he would also call me out on asking dumb questions. Like, if it doesn't apply to you, then don't ask about it." But I would just sometimes play devil's advocate, if that's the term, and just be like, "Well, what about this?" Because there were also some Hanafi teachings that said that if you inhale very strong smells while you were fasting, it could break your fast. And I would say, well, I'm in the kitchen like 7 hours of the day in Ramadan, so would that break my fast? Like, I'm literally smelling food. And my was like, no, that won't break your fast. And she was like, if you smell perfume. And I was like, yeah, but who's eating perfume? It was these things that really like led me on the path to, okay, I want to practice better. So I want to come down to what actually breaks my purity, what actually constitutes my salah. So my salah started changing, the way that the way that I prayed, the way that I fasted, the way that I covered myself, all of that started changing into a more traditionalist understanding of Islam. And that's what we called Salafi or Wahhabi Islam. Although we never called it Wahhabi, because Wahhab is one of the names of Allah, and that is shirk.
It's considered derogatory by people, right?
Yeah.
But isn't it the case that even some Salafis refer to specific kinds of Salafis as Wahhabis or something like that?
As far as I'm aware, we don't do that because it's under Allah.
Okay.
Yeah. I say like I'm still a part of it.
we. just for people to understand, so the distinction that we're making here is that in Sunni Islam is usually divided into four schools of thought, and in those four schools, certain practices and even crucial practices, like about purity and prayer, differ in their practices based on what the teachers or the scholars of these four schools have said and taught. And Muslims who follow these four schools, and almost every mainstream Sunni Muslim follows one of these four schools. Muslims usually have references about those differences per school. But when we come to Salafi Islam alleviates this, or kind of attempts to remove this divide.
غير مقلد, without following anyone.
Yeah, they attempt to go to the root, to the fundamentals of Islam, without this confusing divide of we do this way and we do that way. It tries to have a fundamentalist approach to Islam, which is why it is also known as fundamentalism. It tries to go back as far as possible in the teachings of Islam, and thereby it also applies very strict literalism in its interpretation and its teaching of Islam. For example, we see that many mainstream Sunni Muslims, especially Sufi Muslims, mysticist Muslims, have very strange interpretations, or interpretations that seem to go far off from the literal reading of the Quran or the Hadith, the narrations often about Muhammad, for example, whereas the Salafis try to be as literalist as possible in reading the Quran and reading the Hadith, which is why you may sometimes see regular Sunni Muslims complain that the Salafis are just making Islam look worse than it is by being very literalist, whereas the Salafis will defend this by saying we are supposed to read the Quran as it is, instead of relying on our minds and on our logic and all that. So big issue. Long story short, that was your path toward traditionalist Salafi.
Did it make sense to what I was saying? I'm hoping it made sense. A lot of terms. And sometimes even because I have Muslim friends now who are, of all colors, Sunni, Shia, all kinds, right? And sometimes when I try to tell them about this, they'll their head will start spinning. It's like there's too much information. But that's, I mean, I don't want to be one of those people that was like I was the best possible Muslim I could be, but I did try to do my best, do my due diligence and practice Islam to the best of my ability, because I thought it was really, really important. And also it was one of my only goals in life was to be a good Muslim. And there was also a certain level of responsibility that was put on me as a woman. You're going to be the mother of the next generation. So it's up to you to learn your religion so that you can pass it on correctly to the next generation. And the other sort of thing that gave me a level of urgency was the hadith that there would be 73 or 72 sects, and all of them on fire but one. I don't know. The cards are really, really against you as a Muslim. I don't envy your position.
I didn't grow up as a fundamentalist Muslim, so I was my parents were Sufi Muslims, which you could consider polar opposites of Salafi traditionalist Islam. In fact,
yeah.
Yeah, in fact, we used to learn it's a strange thing. It's a strange divide. From the outside, you don't really see it, and from a mainstream Sunni Muslim perspective, you don't really see it. But when you grow up as a Sufi Muslim, for example, you are basically you do not only learn that you are not to trust the non-Muslim disbelievers who are out there to end us and to end Islam, and that we should prepare. We also learn that the Salafis, the traditionalists, hate us, and that they would like to persecute us and kill us if they had the option, if they had the opportunity.
To the benefit of your parents, to give them some credit, that probably wasn't far off from the truth.
Yeah, well, it happened in history. I mean, we have known names. For example, Mansur al-Hallaj, for example, who was brutally killed brutally killed in the Islamic States. We have a history of fundamentalists severely advocating for the persecution of Sufis and other Muslims.
Fundamentalists imprisoned and killed each other. You know, like we talked about Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he was in prison for a lot of his life because he didn't want to believe that the Quran was created. Ibn Taymiyyah, who we also just mentioned, he was in prison for saying that hell isn't an eternal thing. The Salafis are notorious for sort of constantly being very nitpicky about the things, like the whole argument about whether or not the Quran is created is just a completely pointless argument, but it's been had for hundreds of years at this point. It's ridiculous. Like someone asked me about it a couple of months ago, and I was like really trying to hammer home that I don't believe that the Quran was created, and I'm not even a part of this religion anymore. Like that's how ingrained it is into you.
It's funny. I was just today writing down many patterns of thinking and behaviors that I see sometimes, that I still do, because of the brutal Islamic obsessive compulsive indoctrination, and they still come forth sometimes, simple patterns of thinking, as if I'm in some position to defend something that I learned as a Muslim. It does happen. I just wanted to mention something. What was that? One big issue. One big, huge. I can't even begin to explain how huge this matter is between Sufis and Salafis. Is the nature of Allah and the location of Allah. So it's like it has caused so much outrage. It still causes so much outrage. People have condemned each other over that.
It's such a small issue, though, if you think about it.
I know, but the thing is, it is such an unimportant, stupid thing that none of these two sides can solve. But they have.
This was one of the other things that I had like a big contention with my teacher with. So I had a teacher at this Islamic school, and she would insist that Allah was everywhere, and that's just not. It's just not true. He's above his arsh. That's what we learn, you know.
The thing, yeah. So above his arsh means his throne. That's the throne of. Yeah, chair, whatever. The throne of Allah. So, on a literal reading of the Quran and the Hadith, you learn that Allah, after creating the earth, he established himself above his throne. But that's what you see if you read it literally. But Sufi Muslims, especially, are on the opposite end and say, no, you cannot understand it that way. It just means above, established above in a metaphorical way. What it actually.
There are also hadith that say that Allah descends to the seventh heaven, like the last third of the night. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not real, but I think there's a part of me that really wants it to be, because I spent so much of my life on it. It's sad. It's honestly sad. It's one of the sadder things about me is that like I studied this entire mythology to filth. Like I'm not going to say I left no stone unturned, but I turned a lot of stones, and it just bothers me that I spent so much of my time on it, and now it's just got nothing to do with my life.
I get it.
It's like looking into, so like I love, for example, anime. Like I learned so much anime lore, and it has no bearing on anything except for some of my friendships. But I can still say, oh, you know, this is where I put this knowledge to use. But when it comes to Islam, it's just there's nowhere to put it.
Yeah. Someone just pointed out in the chat how funny the word Arsch sounds, because in German Arsch means ass. So I always thought that too. I have to be very honest. When I was a child and I was a teenager and I grew up in Germany, knowing the word Arsch, whenever people in religious environments, in Islamic environments, mentioned the word Arsch, I had to like kind of childishly laugh in my mind, but try to suppress it. But but yeah, it's weird. You know, the issue is with Sufi Muslims. Sufi Muslims are very corrupt in their way of of classifying hadiths into authentic and inauthentic. Like even I today, as an ex-Muslim, sit here and usually judge hadith the way Salafi Muslims judge them. I look at the chain. I look at what was classified as authentic, good, sound, whatever it is. But Sufi Muslims often don't have that. Even very highly respected Sufi scholars don't do that. They take the weakest, most unreliable hadith that are mentioned somewhere in some random book. They take those as authentic proof about Muhammad and about Allah. Allah. So they don't even have this rigid distinction of only taking the authentic hadith. They take the authentic ones, the good ones, the weak ones. They even take ones that are by Salafis classified as fabricated. It is really strange. So thereby we, for example, as Sufis, I say we, thereby Sufis, for example, often believe in very strange hadith in which one, for example, is a hadith where Allah says to Muhammad that if it wasn't for Muhammad, Allah wouldn't have created the worlds.
Yeah, I've heard that hadith as well.
And that's the messed up thing that I learned as a Muslim. I learned that everything was created just for the sake of Muhammad.
Which is weird. Like, I don't know. Like, if he had such a craving to create Muhammad, surely he could have just put him in heaven with him.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Jesus is still up there. He's still chilling with God.
Yeah.
Islam.
Yeah.
But I think one of the biggest selling points for Salafi Islam was their sort of dedication to authenticity, like with the gradation of hadith. So for people who may not know, there are 6 books of hadith or sayings of the Prophet that are considered authentic or like good books of hadith. Bukhari and Muslim are completely authentic, or the Arabic word is sahih, right? And the other 4, if I can remember off the top of my head, is At-Tirmidhi, An-Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, and I always forget the other one, Abu Dawud. Yeah. And they have gradations from authentic to weak. So they have Sahih, Hasan, and Da'if. So Da'if is the weakest, Sahih is the most authentic. And that was one of the major selling points for Salafi Islam for me, was that there was this sort of honesty or this this dedication to being as authentic as possible. If there are, even if we're looking at something that is fabricated or weak, we first state that this is a weak hadith, so it's to be taken with a grain of salt. And those usually would only be in discussions about the immaterial. So when talking about like hellfire or paradise or the day of judgment, when it comes to worship, when it comes to like fasting or prayer or hajj or giving alms or something like that, we would only take authentic or good narrations, never take any weak narrations to dictate the way that we behaved in that manner.
How is it though with some hadith that are in Sahih Bukhari or in Sahih Muslim that seemingly that have a problem somewhere apparently in the chain of narration or in their meaning? For example, I have seen recently there have been traditionalist apologists, known traditionalist apologists, who have questioned the authenticity and validity of certain hadith that are listed directly in Sahih Bukhari because they see some problem in the chain. For example, there is this one hadith about this one hadith according to which Muhammad wanted to, I believe that is in Sahih Bukhari. I think that was the example. It might be something else. I might be confusing it, but in which it says that Muhammad wanted to throw himself off the cliff, and I think that is mentioned in Sahih Bukhari, if I'm not completely confused.
I'm not entirely sure where it's mentioned, but that is something that's quite known, because we learned about that in school, and they weren't even that conservative. You know, that was something that we learned. There were a lot of things we learned in school that I would not think that a lot of mainstream Muslims learn. Like the age of Aisha, or the way that Safiya bint Huyay was married to Muhammad and stuff like that. But there are different, like there are gradations within gradations. So there are different kinds of sahih as well. I don't know how you would go about at this point after 1400 years, because even the hadith were collected like 500 to 600 years after Muhammad's death. I don't know how at this point you would try to disprove the authenticity or prove the authenticity of something, because you're so far removed at this point. But I don't know this.
What do you think about mutawatir hadith? There's quite some debate on those. Mutawatir hadith, for those who don't know, are usually in Islam considered those narrations about Muhammad which have been narrated by so many different people that it is inconceivable for them to have been made up, fabricated.
I don't know. I generally, like a lot of people, especially Quranists, and I used to argue with them back in the day when I was still a Salafi Muslim. Quranists will argue that hadith is just not reliable because it was collected such a long time after the death of Muhammad. But for me, I think that a saying that has been repeated so many times by so many different people has some validity to it. I think that if a number of people are saying one thing, it allows it to be, because at that point you don't know who to trust. Like if we're going to put doubt on everything. But for me, the reason why that argument of the hadith can't be trusted never flew was because in the Quran you have to take the messenger's word as well. And there is no practice of Islam if there's no hadith. Like there's no way in the Quran, it doesn't tell you how to pray, it doesn't tell you how to dress. And another major selling point of Islam is that it tells you how to live completely. It gives you no leeway on choice in anything.
Well, but this is why that's why Quranists are getting some traction and are getting like the Quranist version of Islam, the Quranist way, which has always been fringe, and it is still fringe, but it has some popularity among some people because when they follow the Quranist approach, they can at least finally say, "Hey, look, Islam is not actually that authoritarian. It doesn't have such a big a grip on your entire life that was just made up by scholars in history." In reality, Islam is not like that.
By itself, still has its own problems.
Yeah, it does. It does.
And I remember early days when I was an ex-Muslim. Sorry, I was arguing with a Quranist, and I just did not know what they were talking about. And they were like, "Oh, look at the site," and I was like, "Oh, you're Qurani. You follow the Quranist interpretations." And they were like, "Well, what do you think of this tafsir?" And I was like, "I don't know the Quranist tafsir. I don't know how you can get tafsir from Quranist because the tafsir is based on the hadith."
Yeah.
And then like when you bring up the wife beating verse, which without the hadith sounds a lot worse. Because the hadith is what softens the blow, whereas in the Quran itself, it just says beat them if you fear rebellion or if you fear arrogance on their part. Whereas with the hadith, it says, use a feather or whatever, or a toothbrush, right? It makes the Quran sound a lot more harsh without the softening of the hadith. So I don't know.
You can bring out a lot of cognitive dissonance among people who are less religious and less knowledgeable about Islam, but who have learned those basic defenses. Who say, when you talk about women in Islam, they say, "Oh, our holy Prophet Muhammad said, those who treat their women good are, the best among you." And then you say,
as if that needed to be said.
Yeah, and then you say, but what about the wife beating? And then say, and then you bring up another matter of a problematic hadith, and then say, well, you cannot trust hadith, you cannot trust all hadith. On the other hand, they will then go ahead and say and try to soften the wife beating by bringing up hadith again.
My favorite argument is that women are so respected in the Quran that we have a whole chapter dedicated to us, An-Nisa, and then with completely ignoring the fact that An-Nisa is completely addressed to men.
Yeah.
It's funny to me.
That is also something that is brought up by people who don't really understand how the Quran works. Just because the chapter has the name Nisa, it doesn't mean that the chapter is just about women. It only has a significant portion of it about women. We also have a chapter called the cow.
But it's good. The cow story is only a couple of lines. Also, that chapter name, I don't know who named the chapters, but the chapter names do not sometimes do justice to what the actual issue of the chapter is. The way the Quran is compiled is like it was compiled by someone who was really and truly illiterate, because I don't know how you can compile a book like that.
I mean, we have about the last the ninth chapter of the Quran, as we have it right now, Surah Tawbah. We have hadith narrations about that, which tell us that Muhammad's companions didn't know what to do with that chapter, so they just put it into that place where they thought it fits best into that place. They didn't know if that was part of a different chapter, if it was supposed to continue a different chapter. They had no idea what to do with it, so they just placed it there.
See, this is why, this is how you know the Quran was just compiled by a bunch of men. Because if it was women, they would have compiled it in two different ways. They would have either compiled it in a chronological sense, where it's at the beginning of creation to the end of, how kind of the Bible is compiled. It begins with Genesis and it ends with the Revelations, right? Or you would have compiled it in the way it was revealed, from Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, from there to the last revelation. But it's not. The way it's compiled is just completely nonsensical. It makes no sense the way it's compiled.
It looks like they had a very, very rigid thinking, and simply compiled it based on what they thought Muhammad was trying to communicate by saying certain things at certain times. And we cannot even trust now. This is why Shia Muslims, for example, do not trust the structure of the Quran. Like Shia Muslims choose to simply acknowledge and believe in the Quran as it is, because they have at some point in history agreed that if they start rejecting the current form of the Quran and start making a big uproar about it, then they will cause more chaos and they will be persecuted. So they agreed to just accept the Quran as it is right now. But Shia Muslims entirely think that the Quran as it is in its current state doesn't make sense, and that it was just arranged like that by those stupid successors of Muhammad who didn't know what to do.
Nonsensical. It's one of the biggest things that now I'm like, obviously back in the day I couldn't really question it, but now looking at it, it really does make no sense the way that it is compiled.
It is ridiculous. I mean, even if you look at it internally per chapter, you read through a chapter. I still think I should one day sit down and just make a summary of the themes of the Quran and just go through it, and just to show how ridiculous it is, how it constantly.
Some of them are really, really interesting themes. Like I like Surah Al-Kahf, I like Surah Yusuf. You know, those are the two chapters that I would say are my favorites, if I had favorites in the Quran. But those chapters do not simply comprise of those two stories.
Yeah.
So so, for example, Surah Luqman is another one I used to read a lot.
Which one?
Surah Luqman. His story is in the middle of the chapter. It doesn't start from the beginning like it should.
Yeah.
It's in the middle, and we don't know why it was called that. Surah Baqarah is like a 5-ayah story, right? The story of the cow where Musa, it's like a crime-solving story where Musa has to find this specific cow and then take its meat and slap the head of the dead person with it, and then he comes back to life and says who the murderer is. It's a weird, like, LA Noir kind of story, but it's like 5 ayahs long. Surah Baqarah is the longest story in the Quran.
200, how many?
Chapter in the Quran. It's like 200 verses, but it's this story. I might be wrong on me saying 5 ayahs all the time, but it's a very small story, and it's a stupid story also. That's why I love the Prophet Musa. He's just he has like the best stories because they're weird and nonsensical. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're talking too much about the compilation of the Quran.
I think it's actually very interesting and very important. This is not something that it's not something that we casually talk about. I didn't expect to talk about this right now at all. I thought it would be...
I think that a lot of ex-Muslims have this resentment towards Islam, whereas with me, I genuinely had an interest in it. So, for example, something that I would never admit in my Muslim days, but I will admit now, is my favorite stories are from Moses, like those in the Quran specifically, because he had the weirdest tales to tell. Like he was the guy who slapped death and so hard he knocked his eye out. Like I still can't get over that. Like, how are you going to say that Muhammad is the greatest prophet of all time, like best messenger, when Moses actually slapped the angel of death so hard he knocked his eye out?
Isn't there also a story about how a wall falls down? Isn't that about Moses too, as far as I remember? I don't exactly remember it.
So the story of Khidr, or I don't know what his anglicized name would be, but the story of Khidr and Moses are together, because Khidr is like trying to teach Moses something, and he kills a kid or something, I don't know, because that kid would be a disappointment to his parents, and Moses is like, you make some good points.
Ridiculous. So
I used to love that story.
I don't know.
Wall stories in there somewhere.
I have to really admit something. You know, I do say very often that I felt very deeply about my Islamic faith when I was a Muslim, and it is true. When I was a believer, when I was very religious, I felt this constant high. It was like I felt it in my chest. It was like cold air flowing through my chest the entire time. I felt so happy, so wonderful, connected, and all that. But it wasn't really about the scripture that I was so happy about. It was just about it was probably just me being so happy and so high about my belief and about my assumptions of Allah and what Muhammad is. Because when I sat down, I read the Quran like 3 times when I was religious in very few years, and the last time I was really questioning it. But when I sat down and when I was actually reading the Quran, I I wasn't amazed by any part of it at all.
That's fair enough, and I think that a lot of people were like, "Faye, how could you believe this stuff?" And the true answer is because I was never exposed to anything else. All I knew, all I did, all I lived, breathed was just Islam, and I was obsessed with these books. And I guess that there was also that kind of confirmation bias that when somebody else said something along the lines of, "Oh, what do you think about this?" It was just like, "Oh, well, the Quran can't be wrong because Allah knows best." And that was the answer for everything. And then I would research it to filth in the background until I could find a satisfying answer, because I know that that's not a satisfying answer. And the honest answer is that there was also a very, very heavy fear with, like you said, you felt this cold pleasure. I always felt cursed with the knowledge that I was a Muslim, because now I had to do my best to make sure I got into heaven. Not so much got into heaven, but avoided hell. Like, that was my goal. Like, as long as I didn't end up in hell. Like, a lot of people are like, "Oh, Faye, how could you be a Muslim when there's no reward for being a woman in Islam?" And I was like, well, going to paradise and not having anything is better than going to hell and burning forever. So that was my reason for sticking to it for as long as I did. It was this genuine fear of me burning in hell forever. And I felt cursed with the knowledge, because there was this, caveat that if you didn't know anything, then you would be immediately submitted into heaven, or like you wouldn't get as harsh a punishment. But because I was a student of knowledge and I had dedicated my quote unquote dedicated my life to learning about Islam, I felt like I remember crying almost every day, like looking at the grass and looking at the dirt and just being like, why can't I be this? Like, this is easy, this is hard. And it gave me a lot of stress in my life. And obviously there were those moments of peace where it'd be like I'd be praying and I felt like I was being heard and taken care of. But I would say that 80% was just this constant fear that I would end up in hell, like constant fear. There was this one time where I had borrowed an MP3 player. I'm really showing my age. An MP3 player from one of my friends, and she had like music on it, and I had not heard music like since I was like 10 years old, and I was going to listen to music. And I remember the moment I put the earbuds in, I just felt this sense of shame. I felt like I was burnt, like I could feel my skin like tingling, but it was like a bad sensation. And I just took it off and I put it in my cupboard and I gave it back to my friend and I said, I'm not going to listen to music anymore. I was like 13.
It's messed up. I had a form of seeking to redeem myself, or to punish myself, to redeem myself by punishing myself for engaging in thoughts and acts that I thought were inappropriate, were not good for my faith. And that is maybe something that is it's not maybe, it is definitely something that is motivated by my Sufi understanding of Islam, because it is kind of messed up. We grow up and we are indoctrinated with this idea that in the Sufi history of Islam, Sufi Muslims, the very religious ones, the glorified, brilliant ones, were these humble people who gave up everything and who would like shame themselves and humble themselves and punish themselves and throw themselves into the streets and under the feet of people.
That, but
yeah. And that was kind of the attitude that I wore. And to be very honest, for a long time, I didn't even want to talk about it, because I felt like if I talk about the fact that I was like that I felt that, it would be kind of like praising myself. But no, I even want to. When I think about it right now, it wasn't even anything good, and I wasn't even doing anything commendable. It was stupid. It was ridiculous. It was pure hypocrisy. It was idiotic. It was dark and stupid to find myself acting in such a way. I would sit down and would think that it is good for me. I would sit down at night and would sit there and cry and pray for those that I love, so that Allah doesn't punish them, and I would say punish me instead of punishing them. And I would sit down and actually say that. It's probably a stupid thought. If why would Allah punish me? That would mean that I'm not worthy of the goodness, and that I wasn't good enough. But this is not something good. This is actually pure hypocrisy. This is simply me trying to virtue signal to Allah because I think that is what I'm supposed to do.
You can't signal to Allah. He knows you.
I know. But if I think about it, it wasn't humility, it wasn't goodness that is. It was simple hypocrisy. It was idiotic, stupid hypocrisy where I'm trying to almost impress Allah by trying to act in the way that I think I should act based on what I learn about Sufi Islam and about Muslims and about what Allah expects me to do. And in a very messed up way, where I completely degrade and humiliate myself, and have this fear so much that I really spend hours there crying, just as you did, simply in different ways. But I mean, can you see how it actually messed with us in a way?
It makes you really, really police yourself. And while I never really partook in policing others, because I believed there's a hadith or narration that you make like 32 excuses for people before you think ill of them or something like that, which is just bad. If they're bad people, they're bad people. But that's what I used to do. Like, my father wasn't a particularly good person, but I would constantly make excuses for him. Like, maybe he's going through something, I don't know. But I was never one that would like take people aside and give them nasiha. Like, I was never one of those people. But I used to hold myself accountable a lot. When I said that I wasn't exposed to anything but Islam, I mean it. Like, I watched the Dark Knight trilogy last year. It came out in like 2008 or something. There were so many things that I missed out on, and that's why it just made it feel more real to me. The whole concept of Allah being the creator and him like creating Iblis and Iblis being jealous of people, and then, you know, all of it seemed real to me. And when people would question my faith then, like, for example, I see a lot of apologetics about Islam, which I personally take issue with, because I never had those apologetics. If someone was like, oh, your prophet married a 6-year-old, there would be no defense. It would just be, yeah, he did. It was allowed. And that was it. You know, it would never occur to me that that is a messed up thing to do because Muhammad did it, you know? And if he did it, then it can't be wrong because he's a perfect human being. Which is why I say now, like, the morality in Islam is dictated by the way that the prophet acted. It's not dictated by actual moral thought. It's just, he did it, so therefore it's correct. He didn't do it, therefore it's not correct. You know.
What do you think about possibly marrying marrying a man and having in being engaged in polygyny?
I had no problem with it. It was something that I had discussed with my dad, but also, like, something like that, I was still a kid. Like, I didn't really fully understand what marriage was, or like having a relationship that was. Like, it was still a very jaded idea. I remember, like, when I got my period, that's when I started saying, I'm going to get married, because it was this like magical fantasy land that every girl aimed for my age who was a Salafi Muslim. Like, quite literally, I'm not even exaggerating with that. My friends can attest to it, the people that I went to school with. I would say stupid things like that. But I had talked about it with my dad, like, oh, men can marry more than one wife. Why can't women? He was like, oh, because, you know, if you have a baby, then you'll know who the parents are. And that's why. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And that was it. That was the end of the discussion. Yeah, exactly. It's.
Well, I heard it all. I had a discussion one day with a good friend who was very learned about the point of about the point of one man marrying 4 wives as opposed to 4 women marrying 1 wife, for men marrying 1 wife. Am I I don't know why I'm
Okay.
did I say it right? Whatever.
Yeah. Polygyny versus polyandry.
Yeah. And I don't exactly remember what the justification or what the discussion was about and where we arrived. But I remember that while there was this whole thing that if one man is responsible for 4 women, it would serve the Muslim Ummah in reproducing further and better and taking better care of who belongs to who. Because if 4 men have sex with 1 woman, then you don't know whose child the child is, and that's just a problem in Islam.
But like, I only needed that to understand it.
And I had this analogy that I actually heard from many other people. I don't know why the hell I heard that stupid, idiotic analogy, but it was something about 1 key can open 4 doors, but 4 keys should not open 1 door, or something like that.
But Muslims will be the first people to say that the West objectifies women. Islam objectifies women, like, to the nth degree. We had sex ed in school, and I put that very lightly, because our sex ed comprised of don't have sex until you're married, and the gays are wrong. That's it. That was our whole sex ed class.
I didn't even have anything.
No?
No.
You grew up in Turkey, right? Your schooling?
No, I grew up in Germany. No, I mean I'm talking about the Muslim side of my education. I didn't go to an Islamic school. I went to a regular normal German public school. I used to receive Islamic Muslim education at the side from Turkish institutes connected to the Turkish government, and also from our Sufi orders and other people. We would have to regularly go like on the weekends and on other days to learn all kinds of idiotic stuff and to engage in weird Sufi practices that we can talk about forever that are just very strange.
We as Salafis used to laugh at. I think that one of the few pleasures of being a Salafi Muslim was that we could laugh at everybody else. We would laugh at Shias, we would laugh at Sufis, we would laugh at everybody. We would laugh at everybody. And that was one of the few pleasures that I had. As like 80% of it was just crippling fear of hellfire, and 20% of it was, well, at least I'm not one of them.
Quickly, I want to see a super chat. Born again made a super chat and said, "Here's my weekly tithe." And Hindu Historian made a super chat and said, "What were you taught about Hindus?" Hinduism was probably relevant to you in a way because you come from that culture, right? Have you had any?
Well, I mean, I grew up here. I was born in Bangladesh, and I've been back to Bangladesh a few times. But I grew up here. We had a lot of Hindus in our area. My best friend is from a Hindu background now, currently. We were just taught that mushriks were mushriks. They were completely misguided. They weren't as bad as the Jews, but they were mushriks, and they made idols, and that was bad.
Mushrik means someone who associates Allah with others. Yeah, polytheist. Yeah, it's the thing is, Muslims don't just use that for polytheism. They use that in very vague ways, also in very derogatory ways. They would even call you a mushrik for worshipping yourself.
We would call Sufis mushriks as well.
Yeah. That's you would probably believe that Sufis are grave worshippers or something like that.
Yeah, we believed that Sufis and Shias were grave worshippers.
Yeah,
we worship the dead companions, or Ali and Hassan and Hussein. And stuff. That, so.
The context is that Sufi Muslims, for all those who don't know, Sufi Muslims are mysticist Muslims who have more of a mystical understanding of Islam.
So
what
they pray on that clay thing the Shias do.
Oh yeah. Sufi Muslims have this thing. Sufi Muslims have holy people in history that are kind of comparable to saints in Christianity, but much further than that. They see them as this direct connection, as this chain between the believer and Allah, and the believer, the prophet, and Allah. So if you go and you can go and ask your holy saint, your holy
it's called, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you can ask those people for intercession, for help. You can basically almost pray to them. They don't call it prayer because that would be considered blasphemy, but they call it rabita, for example, which is
Essentially bribing someone that's better than you to speak on your behalf.
yeah. So you're putting those people between you and Allah because you think they are in some position where they communicate with Allah directly and they can help you. And when those people die, Sufi Muslims usually establish these vain tombs for those people, and then go to those tombs and actually engage in reverence for those dead people, and also in some kind of worship. And Salafi Muslims consider that very blasphemous and disgusting.
We have some in India, Durgas.
Oh yeah.
I think they're called Durgas, yeah. But that might just be in my language. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah. Why did I forget the word? God.
I've forgotten the word in Arabic. It doesn't matter. That's probably a good thing because they use way too many. You know what? At my physical job, my normal 9 to 5.
We used to call him Darga, which is, I think, from Persian. Darga. Or, no, I don't know, whatever.
Iraqi, so I'm like using a lot of, and he's new to the country as well. So I'm using a lot of Arabic to like make sure he understands what he's doing. So I've like reinforced a lot of my old Arabic into my life, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. I studied, for people who don't know, I studied Arabic for like 5 years. I took a test on, like we have GCSEs here, whereas in America they would have what, SATs or something. So I took an Arabic exam for that, and I got a B. So it's not the best, but it's something.
By the way, you said turba, right, or something like that? Yeah. The actual I just remembered the actual word for those tombs was turba for us, which we use in Turkish, but probably comes from Persian. And Dergah was a place where Sufi Muslims go to unite with their leader and all that. Yeah. That's what we do.
My dad would visit them just to take the piss out of them sometimes. That was the kind of person my father was.
We would do very strange things. Like there are these very popular ones, these very popular tombs in Turkey, for example, or in other places where people actually go and drink tap water from there because they believe that somehow has a holy healing effect on them. Which
water.
What?
It's the same with Zamzam water.
Yeah, it is. It's strange that you don't see Zamzam water that way if you're outside of Sufi Islam. Whereas with Sufi Islam, you think that the tap water that is attached to a tomb of a holy person has kind of a healing effect on you, and you have the same thing with the Zamzam water in Mecca.
I believe that, like, we had a belief that if you were a martyr, if you were shaheed, your body doesn't decompose.
Yeah. I mean, we certainly believe that martyrs aren't really dead, but
they're like, they get like their first ticket to heaven or whatever.
Yeah. Doesn't the Quran say they are not dead, they are alive, or something like that?
I don't know.
Yeah. I think that there is a verse in the Quran that says about those who have died. Do not call them dead, for they are not dead, or something like that.
That's another thing. Though I used to envy, like, people would ask, like, Faye, did you envy men because they can do so many other things and women can't do? And I was like, I do envy men, but the reason I envy men is because men can go to jihad. I can't go to jihad. Like, it was really bad.
So when did all of this start falling apart? I mean, how is it? When did you start questioning things really? When did you leave? What happened?
So I left Islam in 2017, and by that point, if you look at the sequence of my life, a lot of terrible things had happened. Like, my mother had passed away. I have 5 younger siblings. My father was incredibly abusive throughout his life. Even though I had a good relationship with him, that started falling apart after my mother passed away. And Islam was probably one of the bigger reasons why I got through that as well as I did, because I thought, Allah's with me. I have to be patient. Like, to this day, one of my favorite verses in the Quran is Allahumma as-sabirin, or Allah is with the patient. And it gave me a lot of things to be patient about. But after I'd left my father's house, one of the things that I did to cope was to continue looking into Islam. because it was what I was interested. It was my only hobby. It was the only thing I had a life in. So I continued looking in it. I continued looking into the Akida and stuff. And obviously, on the side, I was getting help from like social services. I started making friends outside of my Islamic circle, and it was constantly in my mind that how is it possible that these are good people, these are people who are helping me, but ultimately they will burn in hell forever. Like, they're good people, but they're going to burn in hell forever. And it kept bothering me. It was something that I kept looking into. And it was something that my teachers and the people I visited at the mosque, and even people that used to have like call-in shows that you could ask questions on, even they were like, you need to stop looking into this because you've called one too many times. You're probably drumming up the bill in your house. Like, we've given you an answer for it. The answer is that Allah's decision is final. And ironically, I've now learned, thanks to Muhammad Hijab, that Ibn Taymiyyah had the same problem that I had, is that Allah can't be merciful if he has an eternal punishment for the people who disbelieve in him. And there were a couple of case studies that I used. One of the prominent case studies that I use is Abu Talib, which was one of the uncles of the Prophet who is undoubtedly going to burn in hell, but was not a bad human being, even by the Prophet Muhammad's standards, because he actually pledged to continue asking for forgiveness for him until Allah dropped the revelation that there is no asking for forgiveness for people who don't die in Islam, because that's Allah's decision. And that was ultimately what took me out of Islam. And it was extremely, it wasn't even a case that I didn't believe in Allah or I didn't believe it wasn't real. I believed it was real. I just decided I couldn't worship someone who was that cruel.
So you had an issue with the whole concept of Allah being forgiving, but also having such a harsh judgment. I mean, I can relate to that.
I fully was just angry. I was like, how can I worship someone that's so cruel? And like, for a couple of years, I didn't believe that it was untrue. I believed it was true. I thought Islam was real, and my life was just, well, I'm just going to be miserable now. I'm going to go to hell. My life's purpose is over. And you know,
I had the same thing. I grew up in Germany, and I really loved Germany. I really loved how people are. I always considered myself quite different from the average Turkish person and the average Muslim person in that place. I didn't have this national loyalty, this religious loyalty. I liked the way that people are in Germany, that the German culture and the Western way of living is. I liked the fact that we can, as girls and boys, men and women, sit together and be totally just equal and totally, be the equal, same kind of people, without putting these extremely ridiculous barriers between us. Especially after I moved to Turkey, I saw how the gender separation is, how it looks in practice in Turkey, and how people treat each other as a result of that, how men treat women, for example. And in that country, since I liked that culture, I liked Germany so much, I also I saw my teachers and friends and people that I really genuinely liked. And I thought of them as great people, as fantastic people. I had this principal, this woman who would I used to often distract during class in Germany when I was younger, and I would have to spend some time after school writing stuff. And this principal, she would come and just sit together with me and offer me tea, give me snacks, just talk to me. And I thought to myself, at the same time, while getting that, while seeing such kindness and such effort from these teachers and from these people, I learn over the weekend with my fellow Sufi families that I am not to trust the disbelievers, that I'm to hate them, that they are against us, that we are one nation and all disbelievers are one nation who hate us, that they will want to persecute us, we will have to prepare to possibly fight them in the future, that the end may be near, that we may need to fight the Jews until we kill every single one of them and they hide behind trees, and the Christians will be crushed by Jesus himself, and so on. And I'm there really thinking about that while interacting in such beautiful way with these non-Muslim Christians and really liking them. And it was a dilemma.
For me, I guess my fatal flaw in terms of my Islam was that I always enjoyed people. You know, I was never against talking to anybody. I was never against, like, for example, I was one of the people who would declare that in an Islamic state, gay people would be put to death, but I would never refrain from talking to gay women. And it didn't stop me, even though I had that in the back of my head, you know, that these gays are degenerates or whatever. It never would stop me from asking them questions like, what is your life like? Why do you do this? Like, it would never stop me. And some people would take that in a very offensive way, of course, like, obviously they're entitled to that. But other people would just sit there and be like, oh, you're an idiot, so let me explain it to you. And they would sit me down, they would explain it to me, and it was ultimately what I was looking for. And I think at the end of, like, if we boil it down to a numbers game, like trying to win at life to get into paradise, the odds are really stacked against you, like really stacked against you, because thus far, if we look at the stats, there have been more disbelievers than believers.
Far more, yeah.
Far more disbelievers than believers. So Allah's not only burning the disbelievers, but he's burning the majority of his creation. And then on top of that, with the Salafi belief that there's only one saved sect out of 73, you're, as a Muslim, you have 1 out of a 73 chance of actually getting into paradise. The rest of you are either going to burn in hell, you know, partially or permanently.
By the way, that's not just a Salafi thing. I learned the same thing as a Sufi Muslim.
Same thing as a Sufi?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. You know, like, it's crazy to me that people will just wholeheartedly take it. Like, I've been given Pascal's wager, where you just accept a religion in case it's true. And for me, it's like, I believed in it 2 years. For 2 years after I left it, I believed in it. I thought it was real, but it didn't make me think that I should, because just on the basis of the principle that Allah is just the most awful thing to exist ever. Like, I can't worship that in the same way that I wouldn't serve somebody who was a tyrant. I'm not going to worship someone who's cruel. And I thought I was weird. For a really long time, I thought I was weird, not just because I was unaware of the ex-Muslim movement, but because I felt like a weirdo. Like, whenever I spoke to my friends, I only had Muslim acquaintances back then. Whenever I spoke to them, they would look at me like I was crazy. My family thought I was crazy, even though a lot of them saw my sort of detransition. I hadn't declared to them at that point that I wasn't a Muslim anymore, because they were very, very religious, and I was part of that reason why they were very, very religious. But they had seen that I had become more lax in my practice, and they just looked at me like, "What's happened to you? You were so religious one day, and then now it's like you don't even know what you're doing." And I sort of went into the ex-Muslim content, and I would constantly see like these declarations from people who had come from, you know, liberal families or from Shia Muslims who had become, you know, ex-Muslim, and I was like, I can't relate to any of these experiences. Not necessarily because I didn't consider them Muslims. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it's not the same experiences I had, because these people. Like, I never had an obsession with science, for example. A lot of people who leave Islam is like, oh, the scientific stuff in the Quran doesn't add up. For me, that wasn't a problem, because for all I knew, the Quran could be right and science could be wrong. That was my argument. It's a dumb argument. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not a dumb argument, but it was my argument. But it wasn't until, and I wanted to say, like, I know I haven't said this to you, but I want to say this to you. It wasn't until I came across your 3-part leaving Islam story that I was like, so he comes from a completely different background to me, but it's extremely relatable because he did have this passion for religion. And when he left, he felt bad about it. Like, that's exactly how I feel. I feel bad for leaving it because I don't feel like a good moral human being anymore, because I'm not part of the religion anymore. But ultimately, I chose what I thought was correct, and that's exactly what you did. And I don't think I can ever, even though I think there are 101 things that we don't agree on, just politically, in terms of human life. If I ask you if you like cats or dogs, you'll probably say the wrong answer. Like, there are 101 things that we don't agree on, but I will never stop being grateful for the fact that I came across your content. Never. Because it was the one thing that made me feel sane.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's I appreciate that. I yeah, I appreciate that. I understand where you came from. I really do appreciate that. Sorry.
I just want to ask the audience: is it often that you see Ridwan at a loss for words?
No. Uh, no. No. I can relate. It's just I'm having a moment. I don't. It's kind of. No, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being for sharing.
You deserve, like, and that's why, like, when people would ask me, oh, you should collab with Ridvan, and then I would ask you, and then you would be like, yeah, just ask me. It was so weird for me to ask you because I don't know how to behave around you.
Uh-huh.
Because you were the person that took me out of that. Like, that was the first time that I felt like, oh, so I'm not crazy. Like, I'm not the only one who's going through this.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And, like, I don't know. It's just what happened.
Yeah, I'm just a regular guy, so that's why.
But it's like when you see someone do a thing and you just admire them for it, and you never want to meet them because you never want to ruin that image of them. It's like it's an untouchable thing, and that's how I always felt about you. But we've been interacting for I don't even know how long now, on and off, obviously, and it's just this is a surreal moment for me. And we arranged 2 dates before this, and for whatever reason, those fell through. And I was like, oh, maybe it's just not meant to be and I'll leave it alone. And then you contacted me a couple of days ago saying, hey, let's set a date. And I was like, okay, let's do it. I don't know what's going to happen.
No, I really appreciate it. I appreciate it very much. I'm just saying I'm just a guy because I was just really trying to communicate to you that we can talk at any time. I would love to sit down with you, hear from you. Even now that we have this conversation, I feel like we should have talked so much long ago. I often saw how my wife Jenna, she interacted with you quite a few times, more often than I do. I tend to be more withdrawn, I guess. I don't know, but when I
watches every single thing that I put out, and it makes me feel very happy that she does.
It's I really appreciate that. I felt the same thing so often. I still feel the same thing very often when I look into people who have left Islam. When I look into ex-Muslims, I see that people tend to talk about these specific experiences and talk from a perspective where they have probably not really deeply experienced Islam and deeply studied and tried to practice Islam, but they were already liberal-minded or came from families that were liberal in a way, and so they were not directly affected by all the stuff that we are talking about, which is why they cannot really exactly relate to our specific, to our broad, not specific, to our broad theological, scriptural, moral criticism of Islam. That is often the case, and I feel like sometimes I sit here alone in this whole ex-Muslim community, and I feel like, am I the weirdo here?
Like, that's how it felt. It's just like, I'm the weirdo. Like, everyone's over here talking about evolution. I don't even fully understand it. Like, that's where I'm at. And it was just this thing, like, my investment in Islam didn't just affect me. Like, I was the one who radicalized my whole family, because I was like, oh, we need to take this seriously. And then everyone else was like, oh yeah, no, you're right. Like, I was the first one to put on a full hijab. I was the first one to put a niqab in my family. I was the one who, well, my mom was quite practicing anyway, but she was like traditionally practicing, where she would pray 5 times a day, and she told me how to read Arabic and stuff like that. But she never got to the point where I was, where it was like, I need to make sure everyone in my family is going to paradise. Like, it's not just a personal thing anymore. It's an everyone thing. So that kind of investment kind of makes me think, like, even to this day, my family will ask me, like, you were the one who prayed the most, you were the one who practiced the most. How did this happen to you? And it was just a case of, I didn't like who I was worshipping. Like, it was as simple as that.
It really doesn't make sense. I mean, it is definitely. I did disbelieve in Islam for different reasons. I would not say that that the moral aspect was the biggest issue for me, although it was a huge issue. So I did eventually end up disbelieving for different reasons that are based on the scriptural aspect. But what helped me in the end to have the courage and to say, okay, I will just now admit that I'm not a Muslim anymore.
Mm.
And what even helped me cope with the whole idea of the possibility of Islam being true and me going to hell was the whole idea that I find it very messed up how Allah judges humanity, and it's because I was a Muslim. I was under the impact of a Christian morality in Germany and of a Muslim morality from my Muslim backgrounds, and I simply couldn't reconcile Allah's mercy and Allah's sense of judgment and Allah's sense of morality with what I learned in my life to be right and wrong, to be good and bad, to be kind and to be cruel. And I thought, really, should I really be stuck on thinking what if I'm wrong? Whereas Allah is so terrible.
I've made peace with that. Even if I'm wrong, I don't think I'll be wrong, because I've come to the conclusion that I'd rather have a bad time with good people than have a good time with awful people.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, I won't be having a good time either way, but the company will be good,
Yeah, I really feel like I can relate to you. I feel like I already wanted to tell you this at the beginning, even before this. I often look into the stuff that you do. I watch. I'm usually quiet. I kind of feel like sometimes it's like I know you. It's like I know you from somewhere. I know you. It is. I almost compare you to my sister, or maybe a sister that I do not in reality have. So I kind of feel the connection there. I feel I understand how you experience things. I understand the person that you are and how you cannot accept this system that we were given by this religion. You as a woman in completely incomparable circumstances compared to me as a man in Islam. I tried to point this out recently on Twitter. Many people didn't really understand it because they didn't experience Islam deeply, but we as a man and a woman have experienced Islam in completely different ways, although in a way similar to each other. But you were, as a woman in circumstances, under obligations that I never had to be part of, and that I looked at as I know I had pity for that. I had compassion for it. I mean, I knew women. I saw women outside and how they are treated and all the stuff that they are willingly abiding by. And I thought to myself, even when I was religious, how hard it would be to be a woman, to be a religious Muslim woman.
Oh, it was definitely. It wasn't. See, this was the thing with Islam, is that it didn't take me away from Islam at all, that the fact that I was a woman. But I always had this, like, it was the only thing that really made me sad about being a Muslim woman, was that I couldn't respect strong women, because women are considered to be emotional creatures and they can never lead countries. They can't. This was a big thing for me, because I used to romanticize war a lot, is that they can't fight in war. It was something that I used to really be sad about, because I can never be a shaheed. I can never be a martyr in battle. I can be a martyr dying on my deathbed giving birth to a child, but I can't be a soldier. And one of the things that I considered immediately after leaving Islam is, maybe I can join the army now. And it's not something that I have. It's not in the cards for me. I have a real problem with authority, I've realized. But it was something that used to make me sad, is that I can't be a soldier. I can't.
It is weird. I thought that you. We are very similar in a lot of ways. I thought of you as somebody who has a problem with authority, and when you earlier described how you were so loyal and so loving to your Islamic thing, it feels like I get where you were, because I had the same thing. I had this this extreme loyalty to what I truly believed in, but on the other hand, I really hate abiding by certain.
Still idealize the idea of dying for a cause.
Yeah.
I think I still very much idealize that, and that's very clear from the things that I do and put out. But it made me very sad that when I was a Muslim, I couldn't die. I wasn't allowed to die for Islam. It wasn't something that I could do.
You know what though? It happens when you get married. it changes when you it changes when you get married and when you have children. It's like things suddenly change completely, and you
Yeah,
don't think the
I
same way.
imagine it would, but I don't know. I think deep down, I've always thought of, like, even now, I don't really want a child. I still see marriage as a very abstract thing, even though it was something that I was absolutely cloying for as a little girl. Um, it's for me, I've always been afraid of those kinds of things, and I think that's because commitment to me is, I take it very seriously. It like changes me as a person. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Those were things I was really thinking about when I was this whole dying for a cause thing was in my mind.
I'll quickly read the super chats. I've missed them here. Jörg Asmussen made a super chat of 100 Danish krones and said, Faye, didn't you feel being in jihad just by living as a minority Muslim in a majority Christian country?
Not really. I mean, I'm not about to sit here and say that bigotry doesn't happen. It definitely does. Actually, one of the biggest drivers for me to start covering my face was that they were trying to ban it here in the UK. And I thought, instead of, just again with my problem with authority, I thought I would protest by putting it on, and I just continued with it because it wasn't, as my father said, that you could take it off, but where would all that reward go if you continued wearing it? And obviously it was the answer was there. I'm going to continue wearing it. I was 11 when I started.
What did you think about the question, or did this question come up? Was that part of your of your life as a religious Muslim who, in the end, learns about all the moral aspects of living in a Muslim country as opposed to living in a non-Muslim country? Did the question ever come up? Why are we here in this country?
Oh yeah, I used to ask my father a lot, like, why do we still live here? Why are we still in the UK? Why don't we move to a Muslim country? And one of the reasons why I was learning Arabic was so we could eventually move to an Arabic country. Obviously we didn't, because my father is a do-nothing, and that was a defining character feature of his, is that he would say that he would do things and then not do them. That was my father issues coming out. But the goal was to eventually leave. But if you're asking me personally if I faced any kind of bigotry, not personally, but then again, I was quite oblivious to those kinds of things. Like, I'm still quite oblivious to when somebody is making fun of me. I'm much more inclined to take things as compliments, even though I'm terrible at taking them, than I am at taking things as offensive. So take that for what you will. I don't know how to answer that.
Okay. Janice Ritchie made a super chat of £20 and just said, thank you, heart. That's all. Aww. Thank you. Thank you so much, Janice. Yep, that is all there is to it. So,
there are no questions?
Fallen said AP is growing the Achi beard.
The Achi beard.
I used to have that. I had a...
How long was your beard? Was it more than a fistful?
No, it wasn't actually. I never had it that long. It was also the Sufi practice of it is quite vague. But we were told that the ideal way is to do this, but that it also depends on where we are, what the circumstances are, and what our appearance and our actions mean on the rest of society. For example, we did learn that it was absolutely the sunnah to dress and act in a certain way, but we also at the same time learned that certain things cause corruption and disruption in society and among Muslims, and that we should abstain from those things. For example, we wouldn't wear baggy things and stuff like that. We would try to appear as normal as possible. That was like the guide of
saying as normal as possible sounds like a very small thing, but when you're a Muslim, it's a tall order to look as normal as possible. I did not look normal.
Yeah. It doesn't possible. It's not possible. It's not. It doesn't work. I really I found it very strange when I was even when I was religious. I knew many groups that were that apparently tried to look as different from others as possible. And I mean, people still know what I'm talking about. We still see them today. But there are really certain groups of Muslims that really look like they're really trying very hard to look different, to wear these very outdated, weird things, to have their beards and their faces in strange
very
ways.
little respect for that. Because to me, it just read as, oh, so you're trying to look a certain way but not behave a certain way. And maybe that was my own sort of arrogance, but it was just an observation that I used to make, because a lot of my cousins used to dress like that, where they would wear like a long thobe or like a turban. They used to get, that thing that looks like a tablecloth, the red and white, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying, like the long scarf thing. They would wear those, and it's like, you don't get what's the point?
Yeah, especially when when we're talking about such forms of headwear that are region specific, that belong to a specific culture. It's really, you really want to ask, why are you wearing that? Why that? You're not in Saudi Arabia, you're not in Qatar. Why are you wearing that?
I can get why, I would dress the way that I did. Like, my options are limited. It has to be black and loose, my head to toe. Like, my options are quite limited. But when you have like the freedom to choose whatever, like, why are you going with that?
Faye, if there's one thing that you hate or dislike about Islam the most, maybe deeply resent and hate the most, what is it?
Allah.
Well,
going for the top. If I can be completely honest, it's that after like the moment I left Islam, so the second where I decided I was no longer a Muslim, it truly broke me, because I felt like I'd been lied to my whole life, even though I'm still coming to terms with the notion that he is not real, and I've been tricked by an entity that doesn't exist. So for me, it was like this. He's constantly claimed to be merciful, and I was always under this impression to be merciful, but at the same time, I'm so scared that I'm going to burn in hell. It was this thing where I was like, I've been lied to my whole life by this malignant creature that is just the most cruel thing in existence. Suddenly, Iblis or Lucifer being completely jealous of human beings because Allah wanted everything to bow to him made sense. Like, of course he would be upset at that. Why would Iblis, who's been the best of everything, better than the angels at this point, want to bow to a human being? Why would he want to do that? Like, it makes sense that, he would take issue with Allah with that. It also makes sense that he would hate us forever and want us to lead us to hell. Like, why should I hate him for that? It makes complete sense to me. Suddenly the notion of Fir'aun going, Allah's not your God, I am your God, made complete sense to me, because it just seems to me like he was making a ridiculous claim to a ridiculous claim.
mm-hmm.
Suddenly Muhammad standing on a mountain and calling everyone from their business and being like, there's an army behind this mountain, and then being like, psych, I'm actually here to talk about God. Suddenly people being upset at that makes sense. Like, it felt like this universal eternal lie that I had bought into, and something that I respected about myself was that I considered myself to be intelligent, and it just made me feel like the biggest idiot on the planet.
That hit hard. No.
That's what I hate the most about Islam. I think that one of the few things that I do enjoy about Islam is that because I have
my next question.
Yeah, sorry. One of the few things that I do appreciate about it is that because I do have such a big problem with authority, it gave me some level of discipline. Well, it gave me the biggest level of discipline, but now I kind of take away that discipline. It also allowed me to hold myself accountable, which I think if I didn't grow up with, I would end up like my dad, that no one holds him accountable. And accountability and authenticity, and like reminding myself what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Like, intentions, actions are judged by intentions, like very big hadith. That's something I still carry. Like, I still think that intentions are very, very important for why you do things. think the last and final thing that it's made me extremely interesting in that sometimes the phrasings or the stories that I use to explain narratives are very, Arab centric, or they're very Islamic. For example, if I was talking about, it's very hard to like think of an example now because I feel like I've given all my good ones. But like when I'm explaining why I like Prophet Moses over Prophet Muhammad, the biggest fucking example is that he split the sea. What did Muhammad do? He split a moon and then put it back together and nobody saw it. Moses, everyone went through that sea. Like, it's different, and another thing that I appreciate about Moses is that he's very clearly flawed, whereas Muhammad is just like perfect. Everything about him is perfect.
What you don't understand about the moon splitting is that people didn't see it because they were asleep at night. That's why they missed it. So
whereas like the whole point of a miracle is so that people see it and witness the power of God. Where like when you think about Moses, he turns his staff into a snake and the whole fucking everyone sees it, right? And Muhammad, like, oh yeah, I tied up a jinn in a mosque, but you can't see it because Solomon was the last person to, like, shut up, man. Like, you're clearly just making this up. Like, no one saw it.
Okay, next question. Maybe final question. I don't know. What is one thing that you like the most about having left Islam, or what is the one thing that you like the most about a life without Islam? Your life without Islam.
My life without Islam, I haven't quite figured it out yet, because I'm not going to say that my life is worse now without Islam. It's definitely better. It's just that I feel as though a lot of my life was dictated by it, and I think that there's still a level of control it has over it, in that there are still things that I do that I feel bad about, that I shouldn't feel bad about, the completely normal things to do. My periodic existential crisis is because I had such a very defined purpose in life, and now I don't. The one thing that I will say that I do appreciate after leaving Islam is my own individuality and my ability to express the way that I am in the way that I want. And there isn't that sort of restriction on how you can dress, how you can speak. It's also allowed my sort of natural curiosity to be free. Like, I can, even if they are dumb questions, and I do often get myself in trouble by asking stupid questions, I can ask them, Whereas with Islam, that wasn't necessarily the case. Like, I could never ask, for example, am I allowed to like Prophet Moses over Prophet Muhammad? Because the answer's clear. You can't. You're not allowed to. And that's just a case of opinion, that's just a case of whether or not you're allowed to like somebody over someone else. It's not. Whereas, like, factually, you cannot like Moses over Muhammad. You just can't. But now I have this ability to ask questions. Even like for me to have any kind of friendship with people who weren't Muslims was like questionable. I'm not going to say it was haram, but it was definitely questionable. Like, I used to there were a couple of gay people in my area. I used to talk to them a lot because I was just curious about their lifestyle, and I would ask very invasive questions, but it was just trying to satisfy my own curiosity. And it was something that a lot of my classmates and my parents thought was just weird. Like, why are you associating with them? Why are you being seen with them? They're just horrible people. But they weren't horrible people. They dropped off their kids like everyone else did to school. They ate like people. They walked around, went to the shops. I don't care what they do in the bedroom. That's their business. But I want to know what they do. It's just interesting to me. But that was something that was frowned upon when I was a Muslim.
Yeah. Well, I definitely feel like it is one of the best things out of everything. It's one of the best things that after leaving Islam, I can finally have a free mind, and I can use my mind freely the way that the way that a mind works, in the way that a healthy mind works. I can freely ask questions. I can ask questions and seek answers beyond any limit. There is no limit anymore. I can get whatever answer I could possibly get, and can ask whatever question I really want to ask. As you said, that is actually one thing. That's actually the thing that I like the most about not being a Muslim anymore, because I take a lot of pleasure. We take a lot of pleasure out of curiosity and out of questioning things, exploring things, where Islam really puts borders into your head and so many that you cannot cross. You're basically you're in a little cage and you cannot move. What's it's funny. It reminds me of a book that is very important in the Turkish Sufi Muslim history, which talks about. It's called Alfaz al-Kufr or something like that, which talks about what kinds of speech and what kinds of words make you a disbeliever in Islam. So you're not just a disbeliever by saying I'm not a Muslim anymore. You are also just a disbeliever if you say something that you're not supposed to say.
When in doubt, it will take you out of Islam.
Yeah, and one of those things was I read it directly in that book as I was reading this, and as I was trying to get this deep, fantastic knowledge of this book. One of those things that I read there was clearly something like explicitly disagreeing with Muhammad. So when Muhammad says, even if it's not about something completely idiotic, something completely unimportant, like something that Muhammad says about a specific food. So it's not even about existence or about God or practice or anything else. For example, Muhammad says this food is very good and it does this and this, and you then say, I disagree with that. That makes you a disbeliever, and you are. Yeah, and you are no longer to be called a Muslim, and other Muslims are now supposed to tell you that you have hereby become a disbeliever and that you must repent in order to be part of the Muslim community again. And that is something that I read at that book, and I thought, what the hell, man? I didn't think what the hell, man, back then. I thought, wow, okay, I have to be really careful. That's what I thought back then, but that was stuck in my mind. And
I think that the other thing that I appreciate now is that my friendship group is made up of all kinds of people. So I have very close Muslim, non-Muslim friends from all kinds of walks of life. I have an Ahmadi friend, I have a Shia friend. We sit and we compare sometimes. It's really fun because we'll kind of all take the piss out of each other, and it's nice. Because you can't really do that. You can't really take the piss out of each other when you're like in one circle and you all believe the same thing, you know? Whereas, like, for example, Shias have a different way of relating hadith. So they'll be like, oh, you accept all of the traitors, and we'll be like, yeah, but you pray on stones. So it doesn't make sense to a non-Muslim audience. I'm realizing that, but when we're talking about it, it's funny.
It is really a mess if you're a part of the Muslim community, and you don't even realize how messed up it is when you are a Muslim. Okay, let me get to the super chats and then we can finish. Aaron Larson made a super chat of $5 and said, funny that you wore a hijab because they were trying to ban it. That's the same reason why I bought a gun. Thank you.
Hijab doesn't really kill people, other people.
Yeah. Whatever.
Okay, we've never had guns here, but I will say this, that for a long time I've thought that the hijab and the niqab are identity symbols. They've stopped being religious symbols in the West and are identity symbols. So when you attack them...
Of course, they have no function anymore. It's simply symbolic.
Yeah, it's simply symbolic. So for me, when people were trying to ban the niqab, for me it was like, oh, they're trying to attack my identity, and this is something that sets me apart from everyone else, so I'm going to wear it. And I thought I was really edgy back then.
like a Muslim punk. Sit on the Net said in a £10 super chat, Faye, I hope you go on and live a happy and fulfilling life. You deserve it. Well done.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. SB made a super chat of ZAR70. I have no idea what currency that is. Is it South African? Something? I don't know. Hi, AP and Faye. What are the verses when you were Muslims that you found powerful and used to argue against other religions? Can you go through them? I will not say that I found something. I cannot think about something that I found very very powerful and convincing others. I just remember one thing that always made me think, oh, okay, look, this is solid. And that was a very stupid verse when I think about it now, which is something like, if you follow the majority of people, they will surely lead you astray because they are astray, or something like that, a Quran verse like that. And I thought, well, that is me.
People.
What?
The Quran has the worst opinion of people. Like, don't be friends with these people. Don't do this with these people. Avoid these people. These people are your enemies. Like, the Quran doesn't have a very good opinion of people.
Yeah.
Well, when it
Mildly put, yeah.
oh yeah, it could definitely get worse because the Quran also says how explicitly people will burn in hell, but it doesn't necessarily say how good paradise is. The emphasis on hell is really there. But when it comes to guiding other people, I used to argue. Well, not so much argue. I used to discuss other religions because I thought it was interesting. When I was a kid, I used to do a lot more reading. Don't do as much anymore. But when I was a kid, I used to do a lot of reading into other religions and stuff. I had a Bible at home. I had a very abridged summary of the Rig Veda. So I had an interest in these things. And usually when it came to convincing other people of why Islam is the truth, I would point out what I found wrong in other people's books. So it wasn't about the verses in the Quran that I would use to, if that makes sense, like I would read those books with the intention of finding something wrong and then telling them this is wrong.
Yeah. I think I can kind of understand that point of view. It was many times you would rather want to disprove the position of others and make yourself feel more comfortable with your own beliefs rather than really deeply analyzing and defending your own beliefs.
Which is also why I find it extremely funny when people try to convert me into other religions. Which, like, I don't discourage it. It's fine if you want to do it. It's your life. You do what you want with it. But it's just funny because I have like a very layman understanding of a lot of religions at this point because I found them interesting and I use it as an excuse to bring other people to Islam. So yeah.
Sit on the Net made a super chat again and said, Faye, do you feel free?
That's a very big question.
Define free.
Yeah, I talked about like the concept of freedom and determinism. I kind of resent the fact that some of the things in our lives are determined, and I would prefer to be more free. I do feel more free than I was before, but I don't know if it's to my benefit or to my detriment, because I do think that while I was unfree and ignorant, I was a lot happier than I am now being slightly more knowledgeable and free, because now I've missed all of the shots that I could have taken when I was a Muslim, and I will resent myself forever if I don't take them now. So I have a long bucket list, if you will, of things that I need to do that I wanted to do when I was a Muslim, but I am now too old to do as an adult. So like one of the things that I desperately want to do, but I know I cannot do, is go trick-or-treating. Can't do it, but want to do it quite desperately. And I know it's such a small thing, but it's like a thing that you want to do. And
it matters. It does matter.
Yeah.
There are many things that I can think about think about too. As someone who grew up in Germany, I always I had the wish to participate in certain things that I wasn't able to participate in, and it is now too late. So, but yeah, things are unfair.
Things are unfair. I resent that, but also it's just the condition of the world.
Yeah, this is reality.
But depending on where my depression is at, some days it's a lot harder to get past the fact. Some days I'll just be sitting there crying in my own puddle of tears, where it's just like, I can't go trick-or-treating. And I have to sit there and now rationalize that.
It is kind of messed up.
I left going to see this, clip that part and be like, this is why ex-Muslims leave Islam.
That is good. That is good. Please do it, somebody.
Oh, I will pay to see that.
Well, I left Islam 3 years before you left Islam, so I've had more time to think about things and to kind of make peace with stuff. I do, however, still feel like I constantly deal with the problem of existential angst on a regular basis. Sometimes it gets so wild that I deal with it on a daily basis, and no one knows because I never share it. And I'm just trying to deal with it myself and trying to figure stuff out and listen to it and question everything, and think about how tough and how unfair reality is. But then you think about the fact that this is simply reality and there's really not much that you can do about it, no matter how you feel about it. And I feel like I get it, and I sometimes don't want to express how life was in a way more pathetic when we were religious. Life was very pathetic and very naive and very stupid when I was a religious Muslim, I
Oh
would
yeah,
say.
completely. But
But
it took
but
away that
but
level of thinking about, like we were talking about this before we went live as well. It took away the pressure on figuring out what life is all about, because it was
yeah,
already sort of set up for you.
it is often expressed by many philosophers who have dealt with the whole question of existentialism, that when you are religious, religion basically takes away or numbs you and makes you
Artists into that.
helps you deal with the suffering and the pain of existence and of life. So
Yeah.
in that regard, yes, being a Muslim felt completely dark and messed up in so many ways. Although I claimed that I was so good and so happy, I just thinking back, it was totally weird and stupid and naive. And I'm so much more happier that now. It's so much more happier that I am able to be free and to explore the world and to actually live the way that I want to live life, the way that I meant to live life. But it was also some form of medicine, some form of a drug, and that doesn't have to mean that it was good. It just means it was a drug.
For me, I feel like, see, like the word happy and the word joy don't elicit pleasant things for me. And that sounds confusing, but it's because it is. It's because like the concept of joy for me is just such a scary thing. I am discussing it in therapy before anyone that I need to go to therapy for it.
So sorry, can you say it again? I just made a noise.
Oh no worries. What I was saying is that it's something that I've been discussing in therapy at length, is that it's not just that I'm not happy, it's that I don't know how to stay happy. And it's because of this overarching belief that I think that most of life is suffering and joy is the absence of suffering, which means it doesn't last long. And I was discussing this with a friend, and he said, and he was a Muslim as well. He's no longer a Muslim now, but he had a very liberal upbringing. And he said, that's something that I just do not understand, because suffering is the short part, joy is the long part. And I said, that's just not how I see it, and I don't know how to rewire that. So asking me if I'm happier after leaving religion, probably, if we were to stack it up to numbers and days I've been happier, because almost every day in Islam, it's like, if you're happy, then you're doing it wrong. You're doing Islam wrong if you're happy, because this is a place for happiness. This is a test. You're meant to be serious all of the time.
I thought I wasn't supposed to be happy. I was just supposed to be to be satisfied, or to accept.
You know that hadith, this world is a paradise for the unbeliever and a prison for the believer. Yeah. Like I feel like I'm still carrying that around, because I don't know, like when I'm happy, I'm so uncomfortable. I'm so uncomfortable with the fact, like I'm more comfortable when I'm uncomfortable than I am when I'm comfortable.
It makes sense. I get it.
But it does to me. Like I've been trying to explain, because I feel like I'm constantly on a journey when I have to realize that I can sit down every now and then, and I don't know, it's weird.
The reality about life and about humans is many people, especially those who happily participate in everyday life and in pop culture, will not realize this and will not understand this. And it is completely understandable that they don't understand this. But and even many of us don't understand this. But it is completely normal that we humans are very different in our nature. That there are all kinds of different humans in a society that are naturally different, that went through different experiences which shape them in different ways, and we have different functions, different reactions, different moods in society. People like you and I are not supposed to be those people who are constantly joyful. We are supposed to be different. And
you envy that though, because I feel like I don't envy that.
Yeah. I try to participate in this everything is happy, everything is good life, but it just doesn't give me pleasure. It's kind of it's
sometimes I also like. Do you do this where you like idealize your own misery? Where it's
I feel like it's very pathetic, and I didn't want to publicly say that, but yes, sometimes I feel like
I feel like this is when I'm thinking to a higher level, and I understand the world in a way that no one else does, and it's just really stupid, because who gives a shit that you think think about the world in a different way. But I don't know. I people have asked me like, do you envy people who weren't raised in the same way that you were, who were raised with more freedom? And I don't know if I envy it or not. Sometimes I feel like I don't because I think that it gives me a quality that's different to everyone else. And other times I just don't know because I can never understand the experience of growing up in a household where people weren't, beating the shit out of each other and things like that.
Well, I will give you my 2 cents. There is no point to envying that at all, so just don't do it.
Yeah. That's kind of the conclusion that I've come to as well. But sometimes I think, like, I wonder, would I be a different person if I wasn't raised the way that I was? I don't know. It's like the whole concept of fatalism and the way that things are. Would you end up in the same place if things were different?
Well, what the psychology finds, I'm going to be nerdy here. I'm sorry, is that the matter of intelligence, just as much as the matter of personality, is to a very huge extent, which we usually don't expect and don't admit in pop culture, but to a very huge extent, it depends on your nature. It depends on probably on genetic, on birth aspects that are completely out of the control of you and your environment, whereas some of it also depends on your environment and your upbringing. So you are already, before you are when you are born, you are already supposed to be a certain way, both in terms of intelligence and personality and probably mood. So that is a reality.
I don't know. It's just, I know the moment I start thinking about it, it's going to be an all-nighter where I'm just
just forget it.
Whiteboards, planning.
Forget it.
Yeah, it's there's no point in thinking about it. You'll come to a dead end each time. It's kind of why I don't like talking about whether or not God exists, because to me it's an irrelevant conversation. Because to me, it doesn't matter whether or not God exists. You have to give me a good reason why I should worship him. That's my thing.
That's where I am. Faye, I guess we can. Oh, let me see. Was there another super chat? SB made a super chat and said, "You guys make an excellent point by saying that Islam cannot prove why Allah is God. Thank you. Wishing you guys all the best." Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. I think we're already long over the time that we actually agreed on at the beginning, but it was really an enjoyable conversation. I loved this. I have to say that, Faye. I hope to speak to you again. I really appreciate this conversation. I appreciate who you are, how you think, what you are, what you do. I thank you very much for this. Is there anything else that you want to add to this?
Not really. I honestly don't think we're done. I think there's definitely 100 other things that I could talk about. I mean, you focus your content a lot more on the Islam side of things. I try to focus more of it on where I am now and my individualism and moving on from it. So I think that there's a lot to talk about there, because I think that, for example, when I talk about, and this is more of a Muslim woman thing, when I talk about like new dress senses and fashion stuff, the reason why I'm so into it is because I literally didn't have a choice before. And it was of my own choosing that I didn't have a choice, which sounds confusing, but it's not when you look into it. But the one thing that I will leave and say is that even whether you're a Muslim or you're not a Muslim, it's always important to think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And that applies to everybody. And I think that if you have pure intentions for what you're doing, ultimately you'll live the most satisfying life. But if you're doing something without having pure intentions, it's not going to, the cost of it will ultimately become too much for you to bear it or whatever. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to live as true to myself as I can, with as many hurdles as that puts in my own way, because I won't look back, and I don't think I'll ever look back on Islam and think, yeah, that was a better way of living. Because I know it's not true, and my intentions for going back would be extremely morally skewed if I were to go back now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I want to leave with. I
appreciate that very much. That was very good. All right, thanks everybody for joining. I hope you can join us again next time. I definitely want to have another conversation with you. We should have more of these talks. I appreciate it very much. I'm following what you're doing. I will link your YouTube channel where you also share your personal experience and your personal journey very much.
That people have already been subscribing from before this started, so thank you for that. Although I do have to give a big warning for anyone who does join my channel that I'm very undecided on what my content is about. So if you're looking for just like ex-Muslim stuff, you're not going to find that. It usually is just me having some fun with some friends, and that's it.
That's good. That's good. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that very much. You share your honest thoughts and feelings. I appreciate that. It's good to participate in that personal journey as well. All right. Thanks, everybody. I see the comments. I haven't responded to much of it, but I will go live again some other time soon. I will publish a video probably tomorrow. And thanks for joining, everybody. Have a fantastic day. And as always, please stay away from Islam.